First, let me thank you for joining the 6th Capella webinar. As usually, I would like to kindly ask you to mute your microphone during the presentation. We will be answering some questions at the end of the presentation. So if you want to ask a question, please type it in the dedicated window, and I will summarize all the questions after the presentation is finished. Please note, this is not in the chat window, but in a dedicated question and answer window. Now, I have the pleasure to introduce our webinar, and I'm especially glad today, after several presentations from other partners. Now it's Obeo's turn, and today Laurent Deleg will present you two topics. The first one, how to perform collaborative modeling with Capella, and the second one, how to generate documents from a Capella model. As you can see, Laurent is working for Obeo since several years. He's an expert on modeling technologies, and nowadays he is especially involved on Capella by leading the Clarity Collaborative project and being involved in the Capella Industrial Consortium. So I'm sure he will give you an excellent introduction to these two subjects, so important for an operational deployment of Capella. Thank you, Laurent, for accepting to make this presentation, and now I turn it over to you.
My pleasure. Just waiting to get the right to share my screen. Okay.
It should be done. Okay, I can see your screen.
Okay, so thank you for the kind introduction. Today I will be talking about two different topics that both rely on Capella. So first of all, I will start with a bit of context to explain why I will talk about all that today. So as you probably all know, Capella was open sourced in 2015, and once it got open sourced, we started collecting feedback from the early adopters and users. And while collecting these, three major topics were identified as having a major interest for the community of Capella users. The first topic was the management of requirements, how to integrate with requirement management tools, import-export requirements, and so on. The second topic was multi-user collaboration, how to efficiently collaborate on Capella models, trying to reduce the problem of configuration management and version management and merging, comparing files, and so on. And the third topic was about documentation, document generation, for example, importing or exporting Excel data, generating HTML reports, and generating rich documents. So in this context, today I'm going to speak about the two last topics, multi-user collaboration and document generation, for which I will present two solutions. So the first solution addresses the problematic of multi-user collaboration. It is called Team for Capella, and it is a tool to achieve real-time collaboration on Capella models with fine-grained lock management. So I will introduce that and demo that in the first part of this webinar. And the second topic will be about documentation generation, and more specifically about rich document generation. So for that, I will present M2Doc, which is a quite recent document generation solution that integrates in Capella and provides Capella users the possibility to generate Word documents from Capella models. Okay, so after this introduction, let's start first with Team for Capella. So why do we want to collaborate? Well, of course we want to collaborate, but why is it not enough to use the tools that we have in Capella itself and in version management tools? Well, when you start using the Capella and version control management systems, you very fast get faced with the problem of sharing files and splitting your models into a number of files to allow several users to collaborate on the same model without walking on each other's feet, and so on. So the solution that we propose with Team for Capella is to use a shared repository that will allow users to edit the same model, really exactly the same model, not copies of the same model that they have locally, but really the same model that they will all edit at the same time, in real time. And to achieve this edition without having conflicts, each user will automatically lock elements that they use at the finest level that's possible, so that other users cannot break what they are doing. And these locks will, of course, be automatically released whenever that's possible and useful. So the scope of Team for Capella is to manage the collaboration on Capella models. It's not a tool that is intended to manage versions and configuration. Its only purpose is to help users work collaboratively at the same time on the same model. It's not a tool that addresses branching and comparing and so on. It's really only a tool to support collaborative edition. So let's see a bit how it works. You will imagine that on the left, in the greenish area, we have some kind of version control system with different versions of a model. And at some point, a team of users want to work on this model to achieve some project and work on some project. They will create a Team for Capella repository and check out the latest version of the model or whatever version they want into this Team for Capella repository. Once this is done, they can work on the repository, several at the same time, and I insist they are really editing the same instance of model all at the same time. They can leave and come back, of course. At some point in time, they can also decide to export the version, the snapshot of the model that they are currently working on, if they are happy with the result and they think that it's worth saving or worth making a new version with that. So this could be checked in back into the version control system, and then they could continue working in Team for Capella. And at some point, there will be a final check-in into the version control system, which will probably lead to a new version of the model. And this repository can be erased, and it will no longer be used by the team or anybody. And if the team or any other team wants to start again working on the model for another study project or whatever, they will once again check out the latest version of the model into a brand new Team for Capella repository, and they will work on this new repository as we saw before until they check back in their model to create a new version, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's for the general principles of Team for Capella. Now let's see exactly how it behaves in real life. So for that, I will show you a demo. Okay, so as I explained earlier, the first part of the demo focuses on the problems that you face when you use plain files to collaborate on models. Here you can see that the two users waste time waiting for each other to have finished their work to be able to work on the model. So there is a solution which is to diff and merge the files, but this diffing and merging of files, especially on models, is very time-consuming, and it's also error-prone, so it wastes a lot of time and energy to compare and merge the file to get the proper results. Another very commonly used way of achieving collaboration on textual files is to split the models in several fragments, but once again, this will result in a waste of time. So Team for Capella will allow you to really collaborate on the same instance of the model using a shared repository. Now you can see on screen how it really takes place. On the left, you have Bob's screen, and on the right, you have another user's screen. As soon as Bob makes a modification, you can see that there is some kind of green lock that appears on his screen to indicate that he has taken the lock on the element. And on Kim's screen, you can see that there is a red lock that appears to indicate that somebody else is modifying this element, and so it cannot be modified. However, Kim can change anything else in the diagram or in the model that is not locked, and in turn, it will lock the element that she modifies that cannot be modified by Bob. Once Bob saves his model, his current work, the locks are released, and Kim just needs to refresh her diagram to have the modifications performed by Bob appear in her workspace. And the same goes, of course, in the other direction. When Kim saves, Bob can see her modifications. Also, it's possible to lock an element explicitly instead of using the default behavior that will automatically lock what you are editing. That's useful, for example, when you plan to work on a package or a dedicated portion of the model, and you don't want anybody to interfere for a while in this portion of the model. So you can lock the whole package or container or whatever and work on it on your own until you save your modifications and release the lock. As long as you have not released the lock, nobody can modify anything in the objects you have locked. However, they can continue working on the rest of the model, other diagrams, other parts of the model, and so on. And once you're done, you can release in one operation all the locks that you have taken. So here you see that both users continue working each on their distinct parts of the model. And that elements that appear in several diagrams are locked in a sensible way so that no conflict can happen and only the minimum amount of elements are locked. And finally, when Bob has finished his work, he will manually release the locks, all elements and their descendants, so that everybody can work again on the model. That's all for this quick demonstration video. So I will go back to my slide. So what is the status of Team for Capella currently? Well, Team for Capella, I didn't mention that up to now, is a commercial offer that is proposed by Obeo, so you can access every information that's useful on this website and contact Obeo for any additional information that you may need. The current version is Team for Capella 1.1.2, which is compatible with Capella 1.1.2, and the next version to be published in January 2018 will be Capella 1.2.0, which will be compatible with Capella 1.2. Each year we will release one major and one minor release, at least for Team for Capella, that will of course at least maintain compatibility with the associated versions of Capella. To conclude on Team for Capella, just a few major key points that I want you to remember. So Team for Capella supports collaboration on a centralized model stored in some kind of database, but that's just an implementation detail. It supports real-time edition and change propagation. of anything that is performed by any of the users who are collaborating. It's about fine-grained locking that prevents conflict, which is really very useful because managing conflicts in merge and diff is really very error-prone and time-consuming. It's a commercial offer by Obeo, as I mentioned earlier. And last but not least, it's not intended to replace version and configuration management. As I explained earlier, it's a tool to collaborate. Once a collaboration is achieved and has led to a new version of a model, this model must be checked in some kind of version configuration system for version and configuration management. That's not the scope of Team for Capella. And that's all I have to say about Team for Capella today. I will continue with M2Doc, and I will take all the questions about the two topics at the end of the webinar. So now we are switching to generating rich documents from Capella models. So what is M2Doc for? Well, of course, written documents are necessary. We use Capella and other modeling tools because we want to have semantics on the diagrams and on the data that we manipulate. So Capella is perfect for that, of course. But at some point, we need to transmit information to people who will not use Capella directly, or also sometimes to fulfill certain obligations. In all these cases, of course, we want the model to be the reference, so the documentations should reflect the state of the model when they are produced. And we must be confident that both display the same information. Also, documents can be quite useful to support model analysis and review preparation. When you want to perform reviewing activities on models, it can be useful to have a document that will present the content of the model in a way that is better suited for reviewers to work. Okay, so these are different use cases for document generation in Capella. A bit of history about M2Doc. So M2Doc stands for Model to Document. It's a good example of co-creation and co-funding of an open source solution to fit the need of different stakeholders. M2Doc originally has been created when 4 actors decided to put their efforts and funds together to create a tool to address properly document generation from models. So these 4 actors, CNAV, the French Department of Defense, CS, and Obeo, started working on M2Doc in 2016, I think, with the goal to provide a lightweight tool that would be easy to use, that would be robust and performant, and that would allow to generate documents from models. Let's see the basic principles of M2Doc. They are quite simple, actually. Of course, you will have inputs, which are your model. Here it's a Capella model, of course, and some kind of template. We will see later on what a template looks like. With a template and a model, you will be able to provide these to M2Doc that will generate a document that will in some way apply the template to the model to produce the content of the document, as any templating engine. The concepts are not new here, of course. You can apply the same template on different models. The templates can be reusable. So here we apply a template on, let's say, a plane model. And you can also have different templates to applied on the same model to generate different kinds of documents, each document being focused on one particular aspect of the model. That's really very flexible. several roles of users are involved with M2Doc. The first role, the most obvious one, is the end user. The end user will simply use M2Doc to generate a document after they have worked on the model to produce the documents that they need. So they will produce these documents, and they may also sometimes wish to enter text in the generated document in certain specific areas of the document that will be kept over regeneration. This is called user text, and this is supported by M2Docs, so that it's possible to achieve incremental generation with M2Doc on Word documents, so that users can freely enter text in certain areas, text that cannot be generated from the model, for instance. And that's basically all the end user has to do. The second role is the template author. The template author will create M2Doc templates, and for that he will have to use some knowledge of the Capella meta model and to use AQL services, and he will have to test and debug templates before he provides them to end users. One last role that we have identified is the Capella expert, and this role is intended to create and test reusable services that are provided to the template author. This justifies a dedicated role because it may be complex to write such services, or at least it requires specific knowledge of the Capella meta model that may not be accessible to other roles. So that's why we distinguish the Capella expert from the template author, because they don't need exactly the same skills. These are just roles, of course, so they can be materialized by 1, 2, 3 persons or teams, depending on the complexity and your organization or your context. And the template author or Capella expert roles can be subcontracted if needed. If you don't have the skills that it takes to author templates or to write services that will navigate Capella models, you can subcontract this work to subcontracting companies. Okay, what's the added value of M2Doc? First, I would say it's ease of use, both for the end user and the templatist. The syntax of M2Doc is really simple and quite straightforward. The tooling offers a lot of support to help the templatist debug their templates, and the usage for the end user is really very simple. The second main added value is its maintainability. It has especially a very powerful and reliable error reporting mechanism, which is very useful for template authors to debug their templates and make sure they will work in every circumstance. Performance is also a strong feature of M2Doc, which is able to produce hundreds of pages in some seconds. Of course, this performance will depend on what is achieved in the templates. So some templates will be more time-consuming than others, depending on the complexity of what is performed in these templates. But overall, we have produced documents of several hundred pages in really a few seconds only. Please note also that it's possible to use M2Doc in automated workflow context, like in build servers and so on. It has been designed for this, so it's absolutely possible. Now it's time for a first demonstration of M2Doc from the end user's perspective. So I will switch to my instance of Capella. So here I am in Capella 112, I believe, and I am displaying the good old in-flight entertainment system model as an example. We provide on the M2Doc website an example that has a number of templates available to generate documentation from Capella models. I will give you the address of this website at the end of the webinar. So from the end user perspective, the end user will have to create configuration to describe for each file that the user wants to generate. They will have to create one configuration. This is materialized by files like this with the genconf extension. So let's see what such a file looks like. Basically, you have to enter the path to the template you want to use, the path to the file you want to generate, and then you have to specify which object from the model you want to use for the variables defined in the template. We will see later that templates can use any number of variables, but at least one, which is the minimum number of entry points in the model, and the user must specify which object to use for this variable. So here we are simply using the root of the model, which is the in-flight entertainment system. There is also the possibility to use options in M2Doc. When using M2Doc in Capella, it's necessary to use one option called serious session, which has to point to the RD file, which is here. This can be done pretty simply just by clicking on initialize option in the editor. And that's all. Once such a file is made for the end user, they just have to right-click on it and click on Generate Documentation for the document to be generated. They will see a small progress window indicating that generation is in progress, then the confirmation that the document has been generated and the document has appeared here at the location I wanted to generate it. And then this document can be opened with the system editor, which is Word, and this is the result of the generation. So you can see a Word document with a number of pages. Excuse me, I just need to switch one thing. Okay, and this document has been generated. It's 80 pages long. You can see that it contains a number of diagrams, tables, and so on. Bullet lists, all these are supported. You can see that the graphical charter of the document is free. It's really whatever you want to use. And the content of the document has been extracted from the model along with diagrams, as you can see, for example, in these pages. So here we have generated about 87 pages in a few seconds. And there is another template. This one was applied in the system architecture layer, system analysis layer. We have another one for the logical architecture layer that we can use to generate documentation. And this is much faster. And the document is much, much longer because it does not contain actually diagrams or a very few diagrams, but it contains a large amount of text and tables and pages, and so it's 265 pages long. So you can see 265 pages have been generated in just maybe 1 or 2 seconds here. Okay, so that was the demonstration from the end user perspective. Now I will switch back to the slides to quickly explain from the template author perspective how to use M2Doc and how to write templates. So to write templates, this is achieved in plain Microsoft Word documents, docx files, and that's all. these documents and Microsoft Word support a notion of field, which is a specific area in the document where you can enter anything. So this can be made visible in Word by you clicking on Alt F9, and then you can create insert fields in the document by using Control F9. And beyond that, that's all there is to know to create templates in Word for M2Doc. And then the M2Doc syntax is very straightforward, I would say. In the fields, you have to enter M2Doc directives, and they all start with M:, and then some instructions. For example, this instruction, so this is in gray, it's a Microsoft Word field. All the fields have brackets around, and then inside of this field you will enter M:, then some instruction. Here the instruction is actor.name, which means that I want to write the name of the actor, a variable, and this M:, is the M2Doc prefix that must be used in every field that is an M2Doc instruction. This is an actual expression, I'll come back to that. And this is static content that will just be copied as is in the output document. So this very simple instruction will produce, assuming that the actor, the currently selected actor is aircraft, this will produce aircraft is an actor. Please note that the style that is applied to any part of the document, including fields, is reproduced in the output document. So you can generate text that is bold, italic, colored, and so on. Of course, there is a notion of loop in M2Doc. So you will use the for syntax to loop over elements in the model. So here, for example, for all the functions among the allocated functions of the actor, I want to write in a bullet list function, and then the name of the function. So this instruction in my Word document will produce a bullet list with the text function hard-coded, and then the name of each of the functions in the allocated functions of my actor. This can also be used to generate tables with any number of rows. You just have to surround one row in a for loop, and this will generate a table with as many rows as there are elements in the list you are iterating over. Of course, there is a conditional structure. So it's the if in M2Doc, so M:, if, then some condition in the actual syntax, with the possibility to use else if, else if, else if, else, and if. Very straightforward. Now, it's possible to declare a portion of the document as being user documentation. This is how incremental generation is achieved in M2Doc. This allows user to declare some portion of the document as being a placeholder where users can, once the document is generated, they can enter text in these areas, and this text will not be overwritten by M2Doc when the document is regenerated. So that supports incremental generation. It's possible to generate bookmarks and links, which are mechanisms in Word that allow to easily navigate when you open the Word document from one element to another location in the document that is bookmarked. So this is the syntax to use. I will not detail it further. And especially useful in Capella, it's possible to insert diagrams or tables also. For that, you have to use dedicated services that are available and that allow you to retrieve diagrams by their name or by the name of their description, which is each diagram in Capella, it has a given type. You have the architecture blank and so on and so forth. So architecture blank would be the description name, whereas the diagram name is really the name of the diagram in your model, the name that you can change manually when you edit your model. So as an example here, I copy-pasted an instruction to insert all the mission capabilities blank attached to a given package. So these services are documented in the M2Doc documentation, which is easy to find. Please note that the images that are retrieved that way can be fit to a certain dimension to make sure that they will not be too large for the page of the document in which they are generated. So it's recommended to fit them to a certain size so that your diagrams have a correct size in the generated document. Last but not least, I want to talk quickly about validation, which is very useful for template authors. When there is some kind of error in the instructions of M2Doc, the validation mechanism will provide helpful messages that will be located as best as possible in the document so that the user can know easily where the problem is and what exactly is the problem in the syntax. So I will show that in a few minutes. This is really very helpful for template authors, and this really helps gain a lot of time because it's not possible to have the same level of tooling in Microsoft Word as you could imagine in some kind of integrated development environment. So you will not have in Microsoft Word content assist and this kind of tool. But at least you will have a very usable and performant error message mechanism with M2Doc. So now it's time for the second demonstration of M2Doc from the template author perspective. So the template author will have to create templates. As I said, they are plain Word documents. So here are the templates that were used in the previous demonstration. I will just show you one of these templates now. You can see that a template is just a plain Microsoft Word file. And here you can see that it seems quite empty and nothing is visible because I have not activated the displaying of Microsoft Word fields. So I will now click on Alt F9 to display these fields. And then you will see all the M2Doc instructions in the document appear. So if I go back to the beginning of this document, the title of the document will be specification file of, then some dynamic instruction that will retrieve the name of the self variable. You will see that it's possible to generate dynamic content in the headers and footers that way. And portions of text are static and some portions of text are dynamic. So here I will not detail the whole content of the template. I just want to go over quickly the structure of this template. So we first describe the system missions, then the system capabilities. For the system capabilities, we start by displaying the diagrams, the missions capabilities blank diagrams for these capabilities. Then we go over the description of the system and its environment with the different architecture blank diagrams and the mode and state machine and so on. Then we describe the functions in this kind of table, then the functional chains, then the scenarios, and finally the data definition. You can see that each time we generate the diagrams of what is relevant, and we make sure that these diagrams fit in a given size of the page so that the document will look beautiful. Okay, that's almost all the template author has to do. I just want to show you how the template author must declare variables and a few other minor things. There is a specific tool to open templates in Capella, which is the M2Doc template editor. So to access this, you right-click on your template and you click on Open With, then you select the M2Doc template editor, and it opens this editor where you have to select as a template author a number of information. The first is the list of variables declared in your template. This can be automated and you can just click on Add Missing Variables. The first time you create your template, it will identify in your template all the variables that are not defined and put them here. So here there's only one, which is called self, and you have to enter the type of these variables. To be able to enter the type, you have to define all the metamodels that you use. So this is done quite plainly by clicking in this part on Add and selecting all the Capella metamodels here and clicking on Add on OK. Then you have all these metamodels and you can select the type of your variable. And also, it's very useful to import services, which is achieved by right-clicking here and select tokens. You have a number of available service classes. Here there is only one, which is the default one provided in Capella, but in the future there might be others, and Capella experts might provide others that your teams may want to use or not. And that's all. Okay, so I just want to show you one last thing, which is the error reporting. So I will quickly reopen this and make a few mistakes in the template so that you can see that error reporting is useful. Okay, I made a number of mistakes here. I can just click on the template GenConf and ask to validate my documentation template. And it tells me that some errors have been detected. Of course, I just made them. And I can look at these errors in this file. If I open this file, you can see that here the feature NME does not exist. Of course, it's name. I made a mistake here. Then you can see that really exactly where I made a mistake, this does not exist. I have to check and I see that it's contained, not contained. And also the same goes here. So just what I wanted to show is that error reporting is accurate really to the position of the mistake in the file, which is really a time saver for authoring M2Doc templates. And that is all for the second demonstration. So I will go back to my slides. A few words about the M2Doc roadmap. First of all, M2Doc has just been released in 1.0 version, and every information is available on its official website at m2doc.org. It's released under the open source EPL v1 license, which is the same license as Capella. And currently it's version 1.0, which is compatible with Capella 1.1x and Capella 1.2. You can see a tutorial dedicated to Capella at this address, so I strongly recommend you go and see there if you need or want to try M2Doc with Capella. We plan to release version 1.10 in December, which will stabilize a number of current features and improve the integration with Capella and the other solutions like Obeo Designer. And the next release should be around March 2018. The content definition is in progress, and this content will basically depend on the community's feedback and also the possibilities of funding from the community, which will help us sort out the priorities and the features that are most desired and needed in M2Doc. I want to conclude with a few key points about M2Doc, and then we can go to the questions. So, some things to remember about M2Doc: it produces Microsoft Word documents from Capella models, or actually any model. It can include Capella diagrams and tables. It has a simple syntax and it's quite easy to use. It supports incremental generation. Templates are written in Microsoft Word directly. There's no complex tooling of any kind, and you can see that the authoring of templates is not so complex. It has a really useful error reporting mechanism, and it has a good performance since it's able to produce large files in a matter of seconds. Okay, I think that concludes my talk, and we are now ready for questions. So if there are any questions, please, Samuel, can you tell me?
Yeah, thank you for this presentation. Yes, we have actually 2 questions. I think I can answer to the first one. Is the webinar going to be recorded? The answer is yes. And you will receive an email, or when you will leave the webinar, has the ability to request for an access to this video, so you can reuse this video just after. Okay, the second question is regarding Team for Capella. In collaborative work, sometimes I may need to hide certain parts of the model to other users. Certain components might be seen as black boxes to other users. Can this be handled using Team for Capella? Laurent, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
By mistake.
Okay.
I was just reading the question on the question and answers box because the sound is not very good on my side, so I did not hear you well.
Okay.
Maybe to hide certain parts of the model to other users. Okay, so that's typically something that is out of the scope of Team for Capella. If you need a solution to hide portions of the model to certain users, you need to do that in a step prior to importing one model into the Team for Capella repository. What Team for Capella supports is a notion of user profile, and it supports giving specific rights to edit or not some portions of the model to a given profile. But it does not support hiding parts of the model to profile or specific users. This really must be done in a step prior to Team for Capella. And then the next question is about integration of M2Doc and LaTeX document generation. Is that planned? So for the moment, there is no plan in M2Doc to address any other tool than Microsoft Word. So we have, and I must say that's the first time I hear about the need to provide LaTeX documents from M2Doc. So as I mentioned, the roadmap will be built based on the feedback from the community. So if this is a feature that seems to be desired by the community, we will try and take it into account. For the moment, I don't feel that is so, but of course it may change in the future depending on the community's feedback.
Yeah, and maybe in this case, you can have a look at a text generation solution like Axelio or some other ones, rather than M2Doc, which is not built to do this kind of job. But definitely we have other solutions than M2Doc to produce this kind of generation.
Yes, I agree. The point of M2Doc is to make it possible for certain profiles of users who are familiar with Microsoft Word and who know the documents that they want to produce how they would write them in Microsoft Word, taking also the graphical charter into account and so on, to write templates that will allow them to extract information from the model. So we really specifically address people who have a good knowledge of Microsoft Word.
Okay, we don't have any other question yet. So if you want to ask a question, okay. Where can I read more about the object structure of the model?
Okay, so I guess you are talking about the structure of the Capella models. That's a good point because it's important to have a certain level of understanding of the structure of Capella models to be able to write M2Doc templates. This is a question that we have regularly. Actually, the best answer that I will have for the moment is that there is one book that should be published soon, before the end of the year, that will cover the Arcadia method and the data model. So that would definitely be a very good entry point to get to know the Capella model. And beyond that, Capella being open source, the best source of information for its data model will be in the source code itself. There are some documents that describe the major notions, but they are really just overviews and they don't dive into details. So you may want to have a look at the Capella source code, which is available on the Polarsys website. You will find easily the location on the web. I hope this answers the question.
We have a new one. Yeah, I would just say the word for people. Can requirements also be generated into documentation using M2Doc? Okay,
so if your Capella model has requirements in it, you can access these requirements and use them in your M2Doc template. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, you can also access to other data by extending M2Doc, but it's an advanced usage of M2Doc. But you also can consider this kind of things.
Absolutely. M2Doc is actually not tied to Capella. It's a more generic tool that can interface with other data models. Well, okay, that's all. So another question, you mentioned services. Are these services that can be accessed via web APIs like REST, for example, and where can I find more info about this? So, okay, my apologies, I had not the time to dive into too many technical details. So, services are a term that we use in M2Doc to describe plainly, they are Java methods that are provided and made available through extension points so that you can use them in your M2Doc template. So basically, they are just plain Java methods that receive parameters and return specific types like strings or integers or images or this kind of thing. It has nothing to do with web APIs like REST or so, but of course, if you want to write some Java M2Doc service that behind the hood will access remote resources, that's probably possible. I don't know if I would recommend it as is, but it's technically possible. You can find more information about services in the official M2Doc documentation that's available on the m2doc.org website. And I can just go back to the slide where there are the useful URLs. So on this website, you will find m2doc.org, you will find all the useful documentation, and there is also, I would recommend to have a look at this dedicated tutorial, which will help you set up exactly the environment I used for the demo today. so that you can reproduce and have a look at the Capella templates.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we don't have any other questions, and anyway, it's time. So thank you, Laura.
My pleasure.
So please do not hesitate to contact us if you have other questions. And as usually, we will have a next webinar in 1 month. We don't have the exact date, but okay, it's the regular basis. As usually, also, you can vote for the subject of the next webinar. So I'll invite you to express your wishes regarding the next subject. And once again, I would like to thank you for attending this webinar, and I wish you all a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.